Right, today's video is going to be about UV. What is it? Why do we have to have it? Have I got the correct UV size wise for my pond and flow rates through it and everything like that? But before we get to that, I just want to mention that this falls into part of planning your pond. So when you're planning to build your pond, plan it again, and when you think you've planned it enough times, then go back and check that everything is correct. When it starts with the size of your pond. Is this the right size pond for my garden? And then once you work that out, it's then determining how much water will be within that system, the pond, the filtration system and everything like that. And then everything falls into place from there. So the correct size pump to give you the right flow rates, the correct size filtration for the amount of water, and more crucially, the stocking level that you are going to have within that pond. And also obviously comes into that UV and flow rates through the UV, etc. But that we'll deal with in a completely different video. So today we're talking about UV. UV, as we all know, its function is to make sure that we remove algal cells from the water and keep the water nice and clear. Would I ever put a sterilizer on the pond? No. Simple reason for that is with a sterilizer, yes, you can use sterilizers even to kill off parasites and things like that. But if you're killing the parasites, you have to remember that you are also killing off a lot of other organisms that are very, very beneficial to the way your pond ecosystem works. So I would never advocate putting on a sterilizer. Personal preference. But always you will need a clarifier. So that clarifier, as we've said, it's there to remove the algal cells from your water. So first off, the algae. Generally there are two types of algae that live within your pond's ecosystem. We have the short algae that generally lives on the side of your pond walls and places like that you'll have all seen. It's about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch maximum, and that, like I say, lives generally on the sides of your pond. We consider this good algae. It's not always good, but overall it is beneficial to your pond's ecosystem. Common sense dictates that you have lots of organisms that live within that are beneficial to your pond's ecosystem. But also the other thing that it does do, we talked the other day about the nitrogen cycle and how at the end of that nitrogen cycle you're left with nitrate. So this short algae mops that nitrate up and converts it basically through to oxygen, which is why we call it beneficial algae. However, the problem with this algae is when the weather is warm, it will absolutely marmalise your water with algal cells, millions and millions and millions of them, and make your water green, causing algal bloom. So that's when that particular algae is not good. The other algae is the string algae that is an absolute pain in the butt, and there is no way, it doesn't even realise that you've got a UV on your pond. And the only way to get rid of that string algae is to use a chemical. That we'll deal with in another video. So string algae, not affected by your UV, doesn't do anything for it. It can only be controlled by chemical. But it's the algal blooms that we're concerned with today that will make your water green. So right size UV for your pond. How do you know you've got the right size? If you go on the internet, you'll see lots and lots of different figures quoted. As a rule, what you're looking at is 4 to 5 watts per 1,000 litres of water. That will give you good coverage and make sure that your water does not go green. However, the other factor into this is flow rates, which we'll come back to in a minute. So as a quick calculation, if somebody's building a 10,000 litre pond, we would always fit a 55 watt UV to that. There are always lots of variables. Is your pond in direct sunlight 24/7, etc., things like that? Is it in a shaded corner where you don't need quite so much UV? But as a rule, 10,000 litre pond, you're going to be putting on a 55 watt UV, and that will give you absolutely adequate cover to make sure your water doesn't go green without being over the top. So a little bit over the top, good. Too far over the top, you're just wasting electricity, and it can possibly do harm to your ecosystem as well. So this is why it's crucial that your UV is the correct size. So how does a UV work? Well, the water passes through the quartz tube, quartz sleeve inside, and is affected by the UV light thereof as it passes through. So it is crucial that you have sufficient contact time, so that water is going through slow enough that the UV light has time to affect the DNA and the splitting down of that algal cell. So as your water comes through, it's containing all those algal cells, gets affected by the UV light, and this is then causing a reaction and breakdown of the DNA within those algal cells, causes the cell to split. It becomes super sticky and then starts to clump, so your filter can remove it. Most algal cells are anywhere between sort of 1 micron and 3 micron. Filters can't take that out. It's impossible for it to do it. So by the reaction of it passing past this UV light, causing the breakdown of the DNA and the splitting of the cell, and then becoming super sticky and clumping together, you end up with bigger size clumps of algae that can be removed the next time through your filter. Nice and simple. Flow rates. So flow rates are crucially important. As we've just said, if it's going through the UV too quick, there's not enough contact time for that reaction to happen. So how do you know that you've got the correct flow rate? Well, brighter people than me have worked out that an ideal flow rate through your UV is to turn over the amount of water you've got within your pond's ecosystem roughly round about once every 2 hours. Nice and simple. If your flow rate has to be higher, determined by your filtration size and what have you, sometimes you can fit a bypass valve so you are getting the correct flow rate through that UV. So again, if you are working on a system whereby your UV is the flow rate of your UV is determined by what's going through your filter, think about this. With your filter, on the mechanical side, the more times the water passes through the mechanical side, generally as a rule, the more particles of waste are being removed. If it's going through too quick, then what happens is the biological side doesn't have enough contact time for the good bacteria then to go through the nitrogen cycle and remove the ammonia, nitrite, etc. So again, brighter people than me have worked out that ideally the flow rate through your filter should be round about sort of once every hour and a half, 2 hours. That is a good flow rate. Works the same for your UV. Nice and simple. There isn't really anything complicated about it, but once you get it right, everything works perfect. So that's UV in a nutshell. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you for another one.